Today, I would like to discuss mapping, how we trace out space, how we organize and navigate the various landscapes of our lives. However, the type of mapping I'm interested in is not scientific, it's not built on facts or figures, and you certainly won't find it in your GPS. I'm talking about mapping here in a figurative sense. Mapping as a way of thinking imaginatively about our landscapes, our spaces, and therefore our communities. Now, poets, writers, philosophers, and artists alike have throughout history referenced these geographical ideas in their work. However, we also do this type of mapping in a more unorganized, everyday sense, even if it is often invisible to us. For instance, let's take the idea of a serene lake. Calm, contemplative. We may seek out this lake because of its cool air, calm water, beautiful sunset. But we have also long dreamed of this idea of a lake and what it could bring to us. Maybe it's a retreat from everyday stress or a rare moment of solitude. And in this way, without ever having gone to this lake, we have mapped this lake imaginatively. We have, without ever seeing the actual space, carved out the ways in which this space could possibly affect us. Now, in this way, another example could be a deserted island, far, isolated. Perhaps it leaves us free to pursue our deepest desires, or a mountain after which climbing we could feel triumphant, brave, perhaps even knowing. But we never had to climb Mount Everest in order to map these ideas in this way. And these geographical senses sort of open up our imaginative functions, and we are able to sort of imagine how we could live, feel, and act differently. In this way, I believe that this quote by Tolkien really illustrates this well, that he loved mountains, or he had loved the thought of them, marching on the edge of stories brought from far away. Now, in this way, I'm suggesting that our imaginative functions open up here, and that our own spaces and the ones that we imagine are not only physical playgrounds for our lives, but also a structure for creative play. Our outer space and our inner space is connected. Therefore, we've talked about this in a sort of poetic sense, but now let's go back to the very real and tangible pathways of our everyday lives. How we reach to open a car door, how we walk through our living room each day, walking to work, through a garden, through our libraries, down Main Street. These are the very real everyday pathways in our everyday spaces. However, these pathways often remain invisible to us. It takes special attention to be reminded that they're there. Now, for instance, if I were to retrace the pathway of this talk thus far, and the way I've moved my body through space, suddenly we were reminded that even here on this stage, while I'm talking, I'm navigating this space with my body. And again here, I'm suggesting how our physical pathways are related to our thinking, our paths of thought. And in reminding ourselves of our physical pathways through our usual spaces, we are also reminded of our thought patterns and how they too can also become routine. Now, I'm very interested in this because as a dance artist, it is our job to constantly think and rethink space. And I believe dancers are, in this way, topographers. We are navigating space with our bodies constantly. And this is why I believe that dancers and choreographers are perhaps in a special position, that they have a skill set beyond its typical use. Beyond executing movement with our bodies, we are skilled in this sort of imaginative mapping. Now, this brings me to a project very dear to my heart called ANS Works on the farm. And with a longtime friend and collaborator, we together decided to conduct an experiment. But before I get into that, it's important to, in explaining how this project came about, that I tell you that I grew up on a small farm outside of Hornell, New York, a small fruit farm. However, for the past 6 years, in order to pursue a career in dance and dance making, I've had to inhabit quite a different type of playground, New York City. Now, the contrast between these two places has always been stunning to me visually, but more than that, the idea in which we inhabit both of these places is very interesting, because they're often seen as opposites, urban versus rural. This is a familiar dichotomy. But my collaborator and I decided that these two places actually had a lot to learn from one another, and that the way they map could overlap, influence, and inform our thinking. Hence, ANS Works on the Farm was born on a pretty basic principle that in order for us to reinvent our roles in the dance world and to put dance itself in a position to do a new type of community work, we had to find a new scenery. We had to find a new backdrop. And since I grew up on a farm, it seemed the perfect place to ask these artists from across the country to come and convene. And we weren't sure what to expect. It was a true experiment. However, we put a sort of faith in the landscape, a hope that with this beautiful backdrop, we could open up the space for imaginative play. And it did. And now, it's not a new idea that environments can change our thinking, or that traveling opens up our perspective, or that dance or any other art form for that matter has the ability to transform us. However, I believe that there is a special opportunity in this urban and rural exchange that has yet to be fully realized by both artists and audiences. That by taking any creative act outside of its specified zone and putting it in a place often zoned for something else, in this case, allowing dance to grow on a farm rather than fruit, we give ourselves the opportunity to re-envision space. Now, these artists had the opportunity to create dance in non-dance venues using crosswalks and cornfields and barns, as you have seen, as their studios. And in this way, they were not only able to reinvestigate their own creative process, but I think more importantly, they were able to be leaders in rethinking space and provide onlookers, whoever they may be in these moments, the opportunity to see their space redesigned. This is something that I've thought about quite a lot, considering that these two places, often seen as so different, are actually connected, and that they can be connected more and more and more. And I think we're seeing that for both audiences and artists, it's crucial to not only show work, but to make work outside of urban cultural centers. And that wherever you live, dance artists should be compelled to use this change in scenery not only as an opportunity to reinvestigate their own creative processes, but to be leaders in these scenarios, to help us redesign space and therefore reconsider the way it is that we function in these spaces. And it's for these reasons, along with our ever-changing economic times, that I believe that it's more important than ever for our community spaces to undergo this sort of imaginative mapping. And I hope I've convinced you that the dancer might just be the best person for the job. Thank you.